Hi everyone, it's Tricia McCannon and welcome to an amazing new presentation on the Divine Feminine. Today we're going to be talking about 10 goddesses that can heal the world. We all know the world has got its troubles and it needs all the enlightenment and love and consciousness we can give it. So this amazing presentation is really all about that, where we're going to be focusing on 10 divine archetypes that we need to bring into our consciousness, into our world. Not only women, but men as well. Many of you may have taken one of my other courses, one of my many courses with Sacred Stories Media. I did an amazing one on Mary Magdalene and the return of the Divine Feminine. If you've taken that one, you're really going to love this, because this is going to show you some of the sacred temples all over the world. And we're going to go into a deep dive with some of these beautiful archetypal expressions of the Divine Mother. If you haven't taken that one, take this one. This is a great beginning. And if you're moved by the Divine Mother, as many of us in the world today are, realizing how necessary she is for us to transform our world, I would encourage you to go into the mysteries of Mary Magdalene, the history, the deep hidden history of the goddess herself, a discovery about the Knights Templars, the relationship with Jesus, the Merovingian bloodline, and all of those great mysteries with our other course. So without more ado, let's get started with our presentation of the 10 goddesses that can heal the world. What a beautiful image to begin with. This is actually Pravati, and I love her. And here in her lap, coming out of this lotus flower, are the three aspects of the male, which are Brahm, creator, Vishnu, sustainer, and Shiva, the transformer or destroyer. But she is beyond and above them all and encompasses them all. And as we're going to discover, this is one of the ways she showed up as the triple goddess throughout the world. Literally from the womb to the tomb, she was the implicate and explicate expression of the Divine Feminine all over the world. For thousands of years, the Divine Mother was honored all over the world, and most of us don't really know this because we're living in many centuries where the cultural expressions, unless you're from the Far East, perhaps where the goddess has still maintained a presence. We have been taught to believe that it's God the Father, whether you're Jewish or you're Muslim, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, if you're Christian. But what we don't know, because it's usually the victors that write the history, is that for thousands of years, our ancestors believed that because they could look around and see that the only one that gave birth in the whole universe was the feminine. It's always the female of every animal species and every human species that actually births the child. So naturally, logically, who would have birthed the universe? It would have been the Divine Mother, right? So it was God the Mother, the goddess, the one that encompassed within her body everything that we can see. So she is both outside of creation, meaning transcendent, and she is inside of creation, meaning that she is immanent or existent and as close as our breath, as close as our own heartbeat. What most of us don't know is for this period of several thousand years, there was no warfare on the planet. Guess what? No warfare. Most of us have grown up with thousands of years of histories of wars, so we can't even imagine such a world. But as long as the Divine Mother was honored as being present everywhere for her children in the vast and eternal cycle of evolution and consciousness, people didn't fight. And then it became the Divine Father and Mother, and that's perfectly great because we all know there's a beautiful aspect of the Divine Masculine. Then it became the Divine Father and Mother, the Daughter, and the Son, which are the aspects that periodically come to the world, not only this planet, but probably other inhabited planets, in order to help the souls on that planet to evolve to the next level. And then the patriarchy rose up about 3,000, 4,000 years ago and began to get rid of the mother, the daughter, and the son. In Christianity, we got the son back, but the mother was demoted to a human woman, even though many across the world revere her as the beloved Mother Mary. So we are at a time now where we've had so much of the patriarchy that the world has become heavily laden with that. We've gotten out of balance. So in order for us to heal this planet, it's really imperative that the divine feminine and the sacred masculine come back into balance to begin to work with each other, and not, master slave relationship as we can see in some countries around the world, but as true and genuine partners. And only then can we begin to have a balanced society. So the Divine Mother was known as she of 10,000 names and 10,000 faces. This is one of her many titles, especially as Isis, the I am principle of the divine feminine. And we're going to be taking a look at Isis as one of our 10 goddesses because she's so vitally important. But basically, she comes in every race, every culture, and every time period of the world. The Divine Mother has come in as a Black woman, as a white woman, as a yellow woman, as a red woman, as a brown woman, all the races. She comes again and again and again to humanity in order to enlighten and support her children with compassion, forgiveness, and love. She was honored throughout the ancient world in forest sanctuaries. Trees were sacred to her. In fact, one aspect of the goddess named Asherah, who was honored throughout the Jewish tradition, they actually had these sacred groves to her where they carved the trees in figures of the divine feminine. She was honored in life-giving springs. She's always associated with the life-giving waters because at the higher cosmic level, this is connected to the ocean of love and mercy, the place from which all life emerges, the great cosmic sea. This is why the sea was called La Mer, and today, of course, it translated to Mary or Marie. It's all connected to one another. So the waters of life, they're connected with really almost every aspect of the divine feminine. She was always linked to the lunar properties of the moon. And of course, the moon has many cycles, doesn't it? We have 13 lunar cycles in every single solar year. And every single 28 days, the moon goes through these beautiful cycles of the new moon, the half moon, the full moon, the balsamic or disseminating moon, the crescent moons, and then three-quarters moon, and then the dark of the moon. And this is connected with the gestation cycles. It's connected with women's menstrual cycles. It's connected to the crops. Because when we have a full moon, the magnetic energy of the moon pulls the minerals up through the stalks of the plants. And this is why the ancients used to reap their harvest in the full moon, and they would plant in the dark of the moon when the energies were at the lowest and the most quiescent. So, the moon was always linked to her. She's reflective of the sun. Although, believe it or not, there actually are solar goddesses out there. But most of us think of the masculine as the solar and the feminine as the lunar. So the moon is linked with many aspects of the goddess throughout many cultures in the world. She's also linked to the sun. When we look at Egyptian goddesses in particular, some of them are very lunar and some are very solar. For example, Sekhmet, the cat-headed goddess, and Bast, and even Hathor, who has a circular disk of the sun with the crescent of the moon with her horns. So she's both lunar and solar, although in our societies we mostly think of her as lunar. The Great Mother was also honored literally in the body of the Milky Way galaxy. And it was called the Milky Way because it was thought of as the mother's milk, the milk and honey from which everything flows. So very beautiful. She was honored in the earth, the life-giving earth. Nothing living can come from something dead, right? So what do we have on the earth? We have an abundance of living things, of crops, of plants, of trees, of fruits, of vegetables, of human beings, and of animals. So, of course, the earth is living, even though in our patriarchal societies, we've been taught to believe it's just a thing, a bunch of dirt, you know. It doesn't matter if we just drill down to the core or not, you know, it's just a thing. That's really not true. Everything in creation has a consciousness. Consciousness permeates the universe, and the divine masculine and the divine feminine consciousness. We have given a lot of space to the divine masculine, which I also honor, but the divine feminine must be recognized and re-acknowledged and re-enthroned in our world today if we're ever to heal this planet. She was also honored in the sacred caves because the caves were thought of like the mother's womb. You know, let's just go into the cave. If you think about our way, way, way back ancestors, our prehistoric ancestors, they weren't making houses or condos, were they? They were living in caves. Caves gave them shelter. It was cool in the summer, and it was probably the same temperature, about 76 degrees, even in the winter. So caves are very important. And of course, when we go down to places like South America and um, Mexico, there are these wonderful caves with these underground water springs. We even find them all throughout Greece. So waters and caves together. Now we see this whole idea of going into the sacred space of the cave with our ancestors, going back to some of the most ancient places where we find the goddess honored. Archaeologists are saying the ruins of the island of Malta off the coast of Greece are probably at least 6,000 years old. And that's a conservative estimate. But in these beautiful circular chambers, you see the mother and the daughter chambers, mother and daughter. Because just like today in Christianity, we honor the Father and the Son, there was a time when people knew that there was a divine feminine that had both of these aspects. And you kind of see she looks like a fat lady, doesn't she? You know, here are her bosoms and here are her hips, okay? But these round chambers were always connected to the womb of the mother. Here we have another circular formation, and there are really dozens of these throughout the Celtic Isles. You see them with Salisbury. They're like almost like man-made mounds or you know, wombs or kivas. You also see them throughout the Americas, and this is all, you know, very ancient. In Newgrange, Ireland, you know, they're actually round temples inside underneath this incredible dome, and you just see how the greenery has grown up around it, even on top of it. So these were sacred sites where shamans and initiates and priests and priestesses went to have sacred rituals to connect with the heartbeat of the Mother Earth herself. And then at Newgrange, we also find these amazing spirals that are, again, found throughout the forest of the Celtic lands. These spirals, you know, have intrigued archaeologists and anthropologists for centuries. We've tried to figure out what they mean. Well, is it possible that our ancestors who didn't have televisions and they didn't have computers and they weren't distracted by, you know, traffic on the 405 every day, they spent a lot more time in meditation, a lot more time developing their inner awareness. Is it possible that these individuals begin to open up their mystical eyes and actually perceive the mysteries of the universe that today most of us can only see through telescopes? These spirals remind us of what? The very spiral of creation. We've discovered that everything moves in a spiral, from the way our hair grows on the top of our head, to the whirls of our fingerprints, to the whirling of the electrons and the atom, to the whirling of the galaxies and the solar systems. This Fibonacci spiral, or golden mean spiral, is built into organic matter. As above, so below. As below, so above. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm. And our ancestors knew this. Again, all connected with the Divine Mother. These are round caves that have been carved out as temples, goddess temples in Scotland. Most people don't know about these things. These are round underground temples in Egypt. Is this like beautiful or what? And here we see the tree of life, another symbol that was always connected with the Divine Mother. And here are the waters. It's like a beautiful temple, isn't it? Here we have more circular temples that are found under the ground, and these are from Egypt. Although they renamed it because the Arabs are occupying Egypt now, but this was called the Hypergeum. Now you might not know what that means, and most people wouldn't, but I think it's really connected with an ancient goddess called Hygienia. Hygienia and Panacea, which are names we use in medicine today, were two of the four daughters of Asclepius. Asclepius, if you may recall, was one of the earliest of all the incredible Greek healers. And this was, of course, a symbol of his initiation level. We see the staff with this incredible serpent going up it, much like Moses had a staff with a serpent going up it. Now, today in the patriarchal religions, we've been taught to fear the snake. Oh my gosh, it has to do with Satan, and mamma mia, okay, be scared. But for the ancients, this wasn't true. The ancients viewed the snake as the kundalini energy of the life force itself. Raising the serpent up meant raising your kundalini to awaken your third eye, to awaken your inner sight. So many times the goddesses in these temples were shown carrying snakes. Now, for us, this might seem very weird to us, but archaeologists and anthropologists have speculated that in some cases that they kept snakes where they could take a little bit of the venom and use that. If you take too much, it could poison you. But if you take a little bit in a mixture, it has psychedelic properties to sort of open up your inner sight. Now, I'm not suggesting any of us do this today because we don't have the recipe. It'd probably be a little overwhelming for us. But certainly the meaning of the idea of the serpent or the snake was different. Even in the Bible, Jesus says, "May you be innocent as doves and wise as serpents," and that's because for thousands of years the serpent was thought of as a symbol of wisdom until it got demonized by the patriarchal religions that were really trying to disenfranchise the divine feminine. So that temple, I think, was dedicated to healing, to Hygienia, who is one of the daughters and healers of Asclepius, long before the Hippocratic Oath that all doctors, even modern day doctors and healthcare professionals, take now. The Hippocratic Oath is the oath to help heal people and do no harm. So Asclepius was the forerunner of Hippocrates. These are round kivas in the Native American lands here in North America. This is the Pueblo kiva. You can see it's circular. And they crawl down into it. I've been in these kivas. It's like just going into the womb of the mother's belly, really. It's like really going into the earth. And the earth vibrates at, I think it's 7.6. It's called the Schulman resonance. And what's interesting is many years ago, there was an investigation done for healers all over the world. I mean, whether they were Christian healers or Russian healers or shaman healers or indigenous healers or Eastern healers or African healers, every single one of them, when they were doing their healing work, guess what? Their brain waves were resonating at 7.6 along with the Schumann resonance. So in other words, by going down into the earth and being in this womb-like energy, you basically entrain your brain, you entrain your consciousness to be open to beginning to resonate with the earth herself. So it's a way of opening up your inner spiritual senses to receive knowledge or receive information. So now today, of course, even in modern times, just like the Native Americans did for thousands of years, we have sweat lodges. And what are the shape of the sweat lodges? They're just like this, aren't they? If you really go back and start looking at this, like there were early anchorite huts, at the time of Jesus when he wound up going to the Celtic lands, and Joseph of Arimathea went there around 37 AD. These were round circular huts. Again and again, the shape is an important shape because it's commensurate with the circular energy of the great goddess, of the divine mother, of the earth herself. Now, this very beautiful image is from the Goddess Garden in Atlanta. This is one of their um, pieces that they literally decorate every single year. These are real plants. They grow literally on her, and she's quite huge. If you could see a person, the person would be about the size of the stalk. And there's a whole lake here, and she's holding the waters. I was just there recently, and she had been decorated for the Christmas holidays with lights, just so beautiful. So this energy of this womb, this circular energy, is all connected with the idea of the cosmic egg. She is the egg itself. She's the place from which life itself emerges. And consequently, you're going to see some of this imagery woven in to many aspects of her. And all this, of course, is linked with the Mother Earth and with the feminine circle of creation. You know, birth, life, death, rebirth. From the womb to the tomb, we are always in the body of the mother, whether we have a physical body and we're in this world, or we pass into the inner worlds and the heavenly kingdoms between lifetimes. So the moon being part of the round shape of the mother's womb, just like the earth itself. But somehow along the way, even though all this knowledge was known and practiced for thousands of years, we've lost our way. We've lost the thread of the plot. We've forgotten the Divine Mother. We've forgotten to honor her because the patriarchal religions told us not to, basically. They did everything they could to dismiss the power of the divine feminine, whether it was, creating the Inquisition for 6.5 centuries, or taking over healing, or killing the male and female healers, where the lineages of herbology and knowledge and healing had been passed down from grandmother to daughter to granddaughter, or from grandfather sage, shaman, to son to grandson. So we've forgotten to appreciate her. There are many holidays we have each year in the Judeo-Christian world, and many of them are very beautiful. However, not one of them really, except maybe Mary's Ascension Day or Mary's birthday, honors the divine feminine. And there are many gifts that she has to give us. And one of the things that happens for young girls and young women is, I know when I was growing up, there were really only 3 archetypes available. You were either the virgin or the whore or Eve, the one who ate from the apple that got blamed for everything. And that doesn't give young girls or young women positive archetypes, does it? It places all the blame for man's suffering on women, which certainly is not true. Adam did eat that apple, if there even was an apple to be eaten in the first place. So that's a big question in itself. That whole story, was really kind of made up by the patriarchy after the Jews left Babylon captivity. They had learned the story about how man and woman were created together, and then the patriarchy changed the story to where man was created first and woman was the servant because she came from his rib, and so forth. And this is sort of part of the beginning of that whole takeover by the patriarchy that we now have so deeply entwined within our Old Testament, and teaching us to dishonor the divine feminine. So it's important that we look at these other archetypes, these positive feminine archetypes, and that we reclaim them. So whether you look at them as women that lived in the past, who had empowered lives, or whether you look at them as goddesses that live in the 4th or the 5th or the 6th or the 7th dimensional levels, who came to visit our planet, who either took birth or came down from the sky, it doesn't really matter. They are archetypes that live in the cosmos. They live in the mind of God. They live in the mind of the goddess. They live inside of you and me. They only must need to be awakened. And to awaken them, we must rediscover who they really are. So we want to take a look now at the goddesses we're going to be discovering in this course. I've chosen, and there are many wonderful goddesses, but these are really important. I've chosen 5 that are north, south, east, and west in the center, and 5 that are what I would call universal goddesses. So we have Brigid from the Celtic land, or Brigid, you can say her name either way. Artemis or Diana from the Greek and the Roman. We have Quan Yin, she comes from China. White Buffalo Calf Woman, of course, is Native American. And Green Tara, who's Tibetan. She's Tibetan Buddhist. She's from the Far East. In the universal goddesses, I've chosen Athena for right, justice, and law, something we need a lot of these days. She's Greek and Roman. She was known as Minerva as well. Mary, the mother, and of course she was Hebrew originally and became Christian. Mary Magdalene, again, Hebrew, Christian, and really Egyptian because she trained in Egypt, even though she wasn't Egyptian by birth. And then Sophia, and she's a Greek and Hebrew. And last but not least, Isis, she of 10,000 names and 10,000 faces, and she's Egyptian. So we're also going to discover along the way some of the great sacred sites and temples that still exist today, that many of which are still functional, and some of which, of course, are lying in ruins, but you can still visit them today and tune into those great energies around the world. So in the north, I've chosen Brigid or Brigid, and she predates Christianity probably by many centuries. She was deeply loved by her people. She's a triple goddess, meaning she has an aspect that's a maiden, a mother, and a crone. She was a healer. She taught smithy work, which are the arts of civilization, with metalcraft, which would allow people to have, basically cauldrons, pots and pans, swords, utensils, all sorts of things that we make of metal today. She also taught dance and music, writing, and I really love her. And there are many, many shrines that are still very active all across the UK to Bridget. The Christians couldn't get rid of her because she was so beloved by the people. And so they kind of turned her into a nun, Saint Bridget, and covered up her hair and gave her a church to hold. You're going to discover a lot about her, but she's really wonderful. She's connected with fire and the fire of enlightenment, and also with holy springs for cleansing. From the south, we've chosen Artemis, and Artemis is the Greek name, Diana is the Roman name, and she's absolutely great. She brings us independence, she brings us courage and sovereignty, and she has a really interesting story. Her temple was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It was absolutely gigantic, and we're going to be taking a look at that today and what happened to it and the discovery. And one of her famous animals is the stag. She has several that walk with her, dogs, wolves. She's very connected to the forest. She's a protector of women, childbirth, animals. And certainly we need her in the world today when we see what we're doing to our animals and to our forest. Quan Yin is from China, and her worship has really spread all over the world today. She's really the mother of compassion, and she brings mercy, forgiveness, and also enlightenment. She's a protector of travelers, of even of criminals, people who have done badly. She's about awakening their hearts to forgiveness, that they might turn the other cheek and change their lives for the better. Quan Yin is really exquisite. Then we have White Buffalo Calf Woman from the West, and she's Native American, of course. She's claimed by primarily by the Lakota and the Dakota tribes, the Sioux Nation, which are 5 tribes. And she teaches us balance. She's very important, not as well known perhaps as some of these other goddesses, but there are prophecies about her return that are connected with the birth of the white buffaloes. And the white buffaloes have started being born, I think, since 1986. So this is a really important piece because her teachings are about balancing the male and female together, and also creating a balance with the animals and the plants, the standing people, the trees, the four-leggeds, the wingeds. She is the one who brought the 7 sacred rites of the people, or of the Sioux, and including the pipe ceremony, the Chinoopa ceremony. So we're going to be discovering all about that. Green Tara. Green Tara, there is an unbroken lineage of masters and initiates that have kept the lines of communication open for thousands and thousands of years with Green Tara. And she's Tibetan Buddhist. She comes from that tradition, but she's a protector, an incredible protector, and very majestic. Her energy is very much not just about protecting the earth, but about helping you to be the best that you can possibly be. And she comes from this Tibetan region. Then we have, of course, Athena. Athena is deeply needed in the world today. She's a triple goddess as well. She has many different aspects, including the aspect that's in the harbor of America, the Statue of Liberty. That is one of her aspects, which represents freedom, freedom and victory for all people. But she brings justice, law, diplomacy. But if you won't listen, she can, kick ass with the best of them and take names. She's fully capable of going to war and besting the people that are really doing damage to the world and to the country. But that's not her first, second, or third choice. But she's a wisdom goddess. Mary, the mother, well, I mean, there are millions of people all over the world that honor Mary. She's had over 250 apparitions around the world. And she gives us messages again and again about the importance of putting aside war and conflict and joining hearts and minds and hands and spirits together in world unity. Mary continues to be an advocate not only for humanity, but for the wisdom teachings of her beloved son, Jesus, who is a master that I very deeply honor. Mary Magdalene, she's been in the shadows for, since the 500 AD period, when the Catholic Church chose to malign her because they knew that she was the wife of Jesus, and they knew that there was a Merovingian bloodline. And the Catholic Church had agreed to back that bloodline, and then they betrayed the bloodline. So they had to erase all trace of it. So since that time, she was painted as a prostitute and a fallen woman, and yet she was actually the female Christ. And it is now time to bring her out from the shadows, to allow women to realize, and men as well, that you can reach a Christed place of the heart, of illumination and of mastership, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. And that is actually how it's meant to be. It's meant for us to be in partnership with ourselves, the male and female aspects of who we are, and also in partnership with one another, not one gender dominating the other. So Mary Magdalene is a very important goddess for us to pull out from the shadows that she's been living in. Even though in 1969, the Catholic Church did come out publicly and say, oops, we made a mistake. She really wasn't a prostitute or a fallen woman. But of course, the damage had been done. So I think it's up to our generation to begin to honor her. And many wonderful women around the world have started having visitations by her. So she's an important one for us to bring back into our world consciousness and to redeem and to re-enthrone. And in so doing, to redeem the sacred feminine within each one of us. So we stop being so critical of ourselves, so harsh with ourselves, so judgmental with ourselves because we've been taught this at our parents' knee and by these religions for a long time. Next, we have Sophia, and of course, she was the Greek um, goddess of wisdom that was said to literally create the universe. She's the pearl of great price. She's the pearl from the Song of Solomon. This is what all the sages have sought, is the great Sophia, the goddess of wisdom. And there's a very kind of deep but I think true cosmology about her, about how she exists beyond space and time, but how she comes into the world and takes form. So we're going to be talking about that. And of course, this was adopted by the Hebrew world as well. So this is a presence that Jesus knew about. And there's even a whole book called the Pistis Sophia. And it's all really about this divine feminine energy. So we're going to be learning about that in this course. And last but not least, certainly, is Isis. And you know, it's a very sad thing that the terrorist group that arose in the Middle East, whose name was ISIL, not ISIS, got turned into ISIS by the patriarchal media. Now, that's not to say they're not wonderful, enlightened people in the media. There are. But I don't think they realized what they were doing. They simply followed suit with whoever had changed the name, and basically trying to soil the name ISIS in such a way that we dishonor the divine feminine. You know, so if you say to someone ISIS, or if I type ISIS in online, you know, and I even have a DVD called ISIS. Anytime someone orders that DVD, there's always a hold for about 5 days, because I'm sure Homeland Security is just trying to make sure that there's no, you know, inappropriate, you know, terrorist activity. And I'm glad that they are. But who Isis is every woman. That's why she was known as she of 10,000 names and 10,000 faces. Her titles are like 5 pages long. She's extraordinary. You know, she was a daughter, she was a sister, she was a wife, she was a mother, she was a queen, she was a refugee, she was a healer, she was a civilization maker, inventor of the first loom, protector of sailors, inventor of uh, um, um, the first sail, the first boat, uh, ender of cannibalism, institutor of marriage. I mean, her titles are just, they go on and on. So she's every woman. And she is the potential for all of us, whether we're a housewife or a corporate executive or a street sweeper or a teenager or an old person, to embrace the in our everyday mundane life, the majesty and the beauty that lies inside of each and every one of us. And this is really the reason that I'm teaching this course. I've worked with all of these goddesses. I've met them on the inner planes. They actually are real. They exist. You too can make contact with them, and they can help to be an ally, a spiritual ally for you. They can help to be an archetype where you work to be embodied, to embody more of their characteristics or their qualities. And they can also be spiritual advisors for you. This is not to worship anyone or to, you know, become, you know, just throw Christianity out the window. No, I honor all the masters. But who we hear about are the male masters. So it's important for us to honor the female masters. And these are all female masters and expressions of female divinity that can touch the heart and transform our lives. And this is really why I'm teaching this class. And it's really wonderful for me to introduce you to these presences, to share their stories, their wisdom with you, and hopefully to have their alchemical divinity begin to work its magic in your life to help you as guardians, guides, and allies in the spirit realm and in the physical world. So I hope that you'll join us for this series. The first goddess we're going to look at is Brigid, and our Brigid, and we're going to begin to discover how her wisdom can illuminate our world. Thanks so much for joining us.